we're rolling.
Devil in a Blue Dress.
Oh man, it's been an exciting week since we've recorded last. A lot of information out there in this Epstein case.
A lot of stuff going on with that. It's too hard to believe.
If it were a movie, it would be unbelievable. If we were reviewing this as a movie, most people would say that's the most unbelievable piece of shit I've ever watched.
Which is most movies we watch. Unbelievable pieces of shit.
But this one's been pretty exciting with death and intrigue and mystery all rolled into one whole weekend, it seems like.
I'm telling you.
Conspiracy theorists are running rampant with this.
Do you think that might be the plan, though? I mean, honestly. I mean, that's...
If you want a diversion and give people something to talk about, that's
exactly the best way to do it, right? Just give them a story about a 66-year-old pedophile pimp daddy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's got a list
the pimp to the stars, man.
He's got a list, man. You know it. Everybody wants that list.
Yeah. Whitey Heiss has got to be kind of jealous. I mean, looking back on her life.
I know, right?
So.
Yeah, it's bizarre. So 66-year-old multimillionaire Jeffrey Epstein, 66, found hung.
Yeah, allegedly.
In his prison cell.
Right.
And they say what he did was he took a bed sheet and tied it to the top of the bunk and then kneeled forward and hung himself.
So it's kind of conflicting on what you get for if this guy was on suicide watch or not. It goes back and forth. One day it is and the next day it's not.
Right.
But when you're on suicide watch in a prison, the blankets they give you are not supposed to support your own weight. You know that, right?
Oh, yeah.
So how would you specifically hang yourself?
Sure.
With a blanket that won't support your own weight? I'd like to know that. It's an interesting question that nobody's brought up.
Well, they talked about the multiple fractures in his neck. And they said it's indicative of somebody hanging himself, but it's also indicative of somebody strangling himself.
It is.
Were the breaks in the neck something they were able to determine that they're fresh versus old injuries?
They never really went deep in that. They just said that there was multiple fractures, which would indicate that more than one attempt. Maybe he just couldn't do it the first time.
That's the question I have. Generally, in the type of... So what they're talking about is I kind of went and looked at this. So when a person hangs himself and they experience these fractures, it's not in the manner in which he hung himself. He has asphyxiated himself is what he did.
Basically, yeah.
Because there's not enough room to snap the neck, which is what you would normally get in a normal hanging, where you kick a chair out from under yourself and there's a fall of a foot and a half. That's how you end up with a broken neck and a hanging.
Right.
What he did, or the way he did it, he should have asphyxiated himself, not broken,
like an air choke versus a blood choke.
Exactly. So it's kind of interesting when you start discussing and looking at the break in the neck. That's a huge question for me.
Right.
And who has a broken neck and doesn't know it? You know what I mean? If it was old, then how would you that would be in medical records. You know what I mean? If it was an old break.
Well,
you don't go through life with a broken neck and not know it.
What if you had convulsions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that could do it.
I mean, when you're gasping for air, you typically would convulse.
Right.
I mean, that's usually what ends up happening.
It's like, almost a seizure of sorts.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
A seizure could give you the violent.
That's a hell of a seizure to break your own neck.
Grand mal.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Unless you know if he's epileptic.
Well, the way I read the deal was that he put his feet on the lower bunk and leaned forward.
Okay.
So he didn't literally drop hang. He leaned forward.
And that's my point.
Which would say suffocation to me.
Exactly.
Lean to hanging.
Yeah, pretty much.
Isn't this how
put your back into it.
This is how Kwai Chang Caine went out.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Oh, well, he was on a chair.
He was.
Yeah, he was on a chair.
And he had some porn going at the same time.
Yeah. So what is that? Autoerotic asphyxia?
Yeah.
Didn't
he was twisting one off?
Didn't Robin Williams?
Yes, he hung himself too. Wow. Yeah, which is kind of, man. I don't know if that's just bizarre. But I'm more. It's funny because when you look at this guy. Dude, he had the dirtiest dirt on everybody.
Yeah.
He really did. If you think about it, he's connected to a socialite or to socialites around the world.
Yeah.
And he has an island with a place on it.
Right.
He has a townhome in Manhattan.
Largest townhome.
Yeah. In Manhattan. Yeah, it's $56 million townhome, I think is what it was.
He had people working for him that were way up the food chain as well, that were socialites themselves that would go out and find these girls for him.
That social circle he was in was ginormous, and I'm sure that the people that he ran with would not want him discussing anything about them if there was some nefarious shit.
Dude, they are
going on.
praying for a black book burning like you wouldn't believe.
Oh,
I'm
you know
surprised
what?
that somebody hasn't called in like a demolition for all of his residences.
Just knock it to the ground. Maybe they'll have a...
Oh my God, a freaking airstrike happened.
I was going to say, maybe you'll have an airplane strike the building he was in.
No,
just
it'll
take
be
the penthouse
it'll
out.
be a gas leak and explosion.
There you go.
That's what they're famous for in New York and Philadelphia is gas leak explosions. I don't know. You know, it's funny because I want to believe the guy's dead. Okay, I'm going to be that dude. We talked about this earlier, Todd. I think that guy scuttled off on an island somewhere or in a maximum security cell.
Some group has him somewhere.
And they're pulling fingernails and plucking eyes because I tell you, the guy's got dirt. He's got dirt that somebody wants desperately, and that's in this day and age. That's what's powerful.
It is. No, that's what runs the world. I think we're keenly aware of that. I think after watching a lot of the public trials that we've seen in this last year with Kavanaugh and other stuff that's come up like that, I mean, look at what dirt can do to people.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
you move mountains with the information you get from that dude.
Exactly.
And it's funny because didn't Clinton take off on vacation when this all happened?
I think they did.
Yeah.
They went.
Yeah,
they went to a private island.
Yeah,
Did they go to a private island.
They're burning files and busting hard drives.
Crazy.
That's the party they're having.
They left the country with like a bag full of hammers.
It's you know, and we're not really kidding, but I'm sure the Clintons are way up on that list. But you got to know that there's more than just the Democrats and Republicans involved in this. There's got to be money guys everywhere.
That's what I'm thinking. I really don't believe this is, that's been the scuttlebutt in the conspiracy. It's the Clintons, it's the Clintons. Well, I'm like you, Ken. I don't particularly believe.
Yeah.
The deep state probably called the Clintons and said, hey, do you know a guy? Can you give us a little hand here and pump some information our way?
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's how that conversation
It's definitely not
went.
a Craigslist hit.
No.
Although, so we were talking, he had a bunkmate, right?
He did.
Yeah, so apparently this bunkmate was gone.
They transferred him out, I think, like 6 hours before he hung himself.
Sure it wasn't rough sex.
It could have been. You never know with that guy. One last thrill.
Yeah, because he's like, dude, I know a dude. You know what I mean?
He does have some weird sexual proclivities.
Yeah.
Well, so he's been in trouble off and on for quite a while for prostitution.
Yeah.
And so I mean we were just talking about a judge, what's his name, Robert Sweet, U.S. District Judge Robert Sweet,
put on by Carter in 78.
Yeah, 78. So that means that dude was 96.
96 years old. And your question's got to be more than this guy winds up dead 3 months earlier. Prior to this judge dies. Now he's 96. I can kind of look at this and go, all right, I can see it. But the question comes to me is, how did it land on this guy's desk? What did he know?
Yeah.
Who did he know? How did it get here? That's my big question about this judge. Because most judges at 96 are sitting back rubber stamping stuff.
Oh, hell yeah.
They're deciding dog catcher permits. And
dude, they're at the hunting lodge or they're playing cards or something like that.
They ain't trying a case like this. No 96-year-old judge is trying a case like this.
Or has he ever had a case that had ties to Epstein in some way that he could have judged?
Well, he did 10 years ago. So he was handling an Epstein plea deal 10 years ago on prostitution.
Oh,
two charges of prostitution were on his desk.
Right.
And he was the judge that was handling that whole Epstein case.
So based on how that went, I mean, if the guy gave you, legal favor, then actually you'd want that dude to freaking come back to his docket.
Oh, absolutely. And
we saw that in freaking Billions.
I know. I love that movie.
Here's the other thing. How's a guy that's got $56 billion or whatever it is that Epstein has, how does that guy get wrapped up in prostitution? With that kind of money, you can have any
That was just one house.
That
was just one house.
I know.
Yeah.
Sex trafficking. Well, I look at it as he just didn't spend near enough money on hitmen.
That's true. They all went, well, so you gotta ask yourself, why him and why now?
Yeah.
And I think that it may have something to do with the closer we're moving to an election.
Yeah.
Because you got Biden running around out there, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, groping Joe. You don't
Sniffing
think
hair.
So that dude was either at the top of the list or he was the do not let in the building list.
Or one of the two.
Because you look at a guy like Biden, and first of all, he's as confused as shit. He doesn't know what state he's in.
It's gotten worse and worse. I've noticed this after the progression of the debates here. His cognitive skills of where he is and what he's doing has gotten pretty bad.
Oh no, it's just so
to even view him as a viable candidate is laughable.
So you got to wonder if what would he say.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Where was he in the list? How many times has he been to the island? That's what I'd want to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I know when you start looking at all these conspiracy theories about the Bohemian Grove and look at all these other things that people throw out there about these sex clubs.
Yeah.
This whole child sex ring thing has been huge. One of the things I think is interesting is you got a lot of independent, like you got a bunch of Navy SEALs and ex-Special Forces dudes out there now that are actually intervening in these sex traffic crimes all across the world.
Right.
And you kind of got to wonder, because remember in Arizona, they had one come back to some very prominent politicians.
They did.
In Arizona. You kind of got to wonder what rabbit hole they were going down.
Right.
Well, with Biden, he reminds me of somebody who would have like a frequent user card.
Yeah.
So it'd be like, hey, every 10th punch I get a free Asian kid.
Dude, his card would look like a piece of Swiss cheese for sure.
But it is weird. Yeah. I mean, you wonder. You hear, like you said, the Bohemian Grove stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Alex Jones has got to be sitting back going, "I told you, I
know,
told you,
right?
people."
Yeah.
And he's saying that in between taking lines of coke off of a stripper's ass.
Exactly.
Yeah, that guy was scary.
But you look at that and the Pizzagate thing with Podesta and all that.
Yeah.
And it's like, this stuff all touches each other too. Not to get perverse about it.
Well,
but it all touches each other.
Not
to a
that there's
degree.
anything wrong with that.
Yeah. Well, all the secret. Go ahead.
But to your point about these team guys that are involved in sex trafficking raids and shit like that. So, on one hand, if you have a high level asset for a sovereign country, because there's no teams out running around working for them fucking selves.
No.
Yeah.
So if you've got a U.S. asset collecting information on a known economy that you're trying to just squash out or whatever, you're collecting information for them to use. So you'll have your foot soldiers go grab fucking hard drives and computers and whatever else they can pick up, and then you're going to bring it back to analysts, and they're going to put this shit together. And really, if you think about it, they're just becoming an intel cell. If we're doing like the conspiracy shit,
Sure,
is we're going to build something. Build a product that allows you to track other people that were like Epstein.
Well, yeah, they're going to end up on the hard drives of the computers. You know what I mean?
Everything's
the net's going to be wide on
Asia.
dude. There's a huge watch list between Africa, Middle East, and Asia.
Right.
Huge. I mean, you look at. Remember the Sultan of Brunei kind of fell off the radar here for a long time.
Yeah.
Because the supermodels were coming out against that dude. And so you have all this with the border. The one thing that I think is really interesting is all this chatter about the U.S. border, and you have this whole. It's a detention center. Now it's a concentration camp.
Yeah, it just gets worse and worse.
And it gets worse and worse and worse. And here's what I think is interesting about it: the more they keep bringing that up, the more we start digging up shit like this.
Right.
Because Houston had a huge. They had a huge roundup of sex trade and sex trafficking.
96,
several,
something like 96 people.
96
or something. This was a couple of weeks ago. It was a lot of folks.
It was huge, and so you have all this stuff going on. That's I guess you call it black market because it's all done behind the curtain, and you got to wonder at some point in time how many politicians are connected to these things. Well, or the rich and famous, because who pays for that?
Right.
I can't pay for it.
No, absolutely not. And that's the only way that it does get paid for. But yeah, looking at like players involved, I mean, obviously you had Clinton that they've reported on. It's been on the Lolita Express 27 times, I believe, is what it was reported.
It's definitely dark web shit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You had Gary Mitchell, the senator, and I think Maine is where he was from.
Bill Richardson,
which was
dude, isn't he in prison now for something like taking contributions or something like that?
I think he's under investigation. I don't know.
No, that's not Bill Richardson. I'm thinking of Cunningham out of California.
Yeah.
Cunningham was the Vietnam pilot.
Oh yeah,
remember him?
Yeah.
So I mean, anytime you see a fall of a politician, you kind of gotta wonder what rabbit hole they were poking around in.
You see one, there's 10 of them that got away.
Yeah, exactly.
But
fucking roaches, man.
I know. Sorry, I'm throwing all kinds of shit at you.
But let's kind of look at the details of what happened this weekend, though. It's very interesting. You could call it a comedy of errors, but I mean, God Almighty. You have guards asleep on duty that aren't actually guards.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The three freaking stooges, Larry, Curly,
Hey,
and Moe,
Lo.
are watching
Hey, Lo.
watching this guy.
Yeah.
They fall asleep at their post. They violate protocol. You have two of them that did it. I mean,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
how does that happen?
Mm-hmm.
You have a camera system that's down. How does the camera system go
It was
down?
a succession of errors,
Right.
like a perfectly timed domino fall.
Right, and all in this time frame, you've got these guards that are taking a whiz or sleeping or whatever it is they're doing. You got the camera systems down, and in this time frame, Epstein decides to kill himself.
So I just have a theory.
Okay.
What if the guards turn off the camera and fake the sleep, and they just got the list,
Yeah.
and they're running this business themselves? You're going to see 2 guards get fired. Next thing you know, they're running hose.
Well, personally, here's what shouldn't surprise you, and you're not far off. But here's what I think. I think the guards get fired.
Yeah.
6 months from now they get fired. One of two things either happens to them: either they end up in a car wreck,
Right.
in the Chappaquiddick River,
Sure.
or they'll be hired on by the Clintons as bodyguards. One of the two.
Well, no,
Making $1 million a year.
It is interesting because the timeline, like you said, the transfer of the cellmate,
The cellmate out. That
the
was
cameras, the time of day, because it was early in the morning. It was late,
six around
early
6 o'clock.
in the morning.
Right.
So you have that going on, and and it's so that prison's had a lot of problems anyway.
Right.
Over the years, it's had a lot of problems, and they keep saying, well, we don't have the funding, and and we have a labor issue, and they have all this. They had all these complaints. Or all these excuses, to these complaints coming up the last
Right.
week. Can you imagine being a warden explaining that shit?
Exactly. Well, and that comes down to it again. It's like, okay, then who picked to put him in this place?
Right.
If you know that this place is the zoo, who sent him there? Who sent him to the zoo?
High profile target like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of people got what they wanted out of this. I think
Yeah.
Was it New York who was going after him, or was it a federal?
it's federal. He was in a
Federal,
federal. He was in a federal. That was a federal facility. It's not a New York facility, so it's a federal facility that he's in.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I just look at this and I go, dude, this is just too coincidental. It's perfect fodder. But then again, that might have just been the way it was formulated.
It could have been. It could have been. It'd make it so obvious that people can't go. It can't be real.
So he's not in the Bahamas working at the Waffle House with Elvis. Is what you're trying to tell me?
My personal thoughts are he's dead. I really believe that. I think he was killed. I do. I mean, you can call that conspiratorial or whatever, but I think guy was killed.
So when you look at a hitman's profile and you look at the high end hit like that,
Yeah.
you got to know that they just don't say go kill the dude. Find out what that dude's going to say.
Oh yeah.
I gotta wonder if there was torture involved before the guy was killed.
Either that or I believe drugs could have been used. I mean, they could have shot him full of sodium pentothal, tripentothal, whatever that stuff is.
Right.
Truth serum. There's a lot of ways to get it out of them.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said,
conducting an interrogation, maybe involving pain management.
Yeah.
Inside of a prison, to
like
me,
that, pain
doesn't
management.
seem like a very wise.
No,
wise
because it's loud.
decision.
It's generally loud and bloody.
Why
and
is
it's
he
kinda-
yelling?
Yeah.
Fucking prisoners yell all the time. it's normal.
No, I would think it would be. I would think it'd be drug induced, something along
absolutely.
those lines.
Well,
You
like
can control that a lot better. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
the narrative is out there. Everybody's making up their own story to it. The funny thing about this country is that we're so free that we almost get too far in the weeds on these things.
we do.
I think you're right. He is possibly dead. That's not a commitment to that statement.
Yeah, no, I'm not taking it that way.
Yeah,
Hey, I wouldn't lay money on my bet
Right.
either, man. There's no way. I'll just say it, but I'm not going to bet money on it.
it's a testimony to just how corrupt the system is.
If you ever hear people telling you that I'm dead, don't believe it.
Right.
Don't believe it. I'm well preserved.
That's funny.